Now, where mindfulness comes in to help you and potentially others is that mindfulness simply means paying attention on purpose. You can pay attention to what's happening to you, to what you're feeling, to how you're thinking, to how you're interpreting whatever's going on for you. You can be really focused on learning more and how you can ask more questions. And when it comes to other people, you can also be more mindful about what other people are going through. If you see somebody that might be going through a bit of distress, you can check in. You can find out what's happening for them. But also, the more mindful you are and the more you develop your resilience, your thinking, your speech, your patterns, your behaviors, your social interactions, all those things change and other people benefit from that as well. So there are 5 core characteristics of a resilient mindset. Now, the first one is about accepting reality and being able to focus on the things that you can control. So accepting reality means being able to look at the situation more honestly, more accurately, getting feedback about yourself, about your behaviors, challenging what you're thinking, but also recognizing there are some things you can influence, and then there are some things you can't. And if you continue to try to work on the things that you can't change, that can be really frustrating. So if you can learn how to focus on what you can influence, even better. Because that then leads into the second one, which is about perseverance and how we make meaning out of things and how we do that more constructively. Because it's important to persevere at the things that work. Don't persevere at the things that aren't working for you. Try something new and then keep trying those new things. And part of that is how you keep trying to adopt more constructive thinking. Now notice I'm not saying positive thinking, I'm saying constructive thinking. I don't need you to go from being a negative thinker to a positive thinker, because you may not believe that. But a constructive thinking pattern is about how you ask more questions and imagine what might be a better way of looking at things. That leads us into learned optimism. Learned optimism is from Dr. Martin Seligman about 20 years ago, father of positive psychology. And it's all about how do we ask better questions? How do we take that time out and explore and see, is there a better way of doing things? What are my strengths? How do I use those strengths? And ideally, it's also about imagining, is there a better future possible? Can I imagine that happening? A good way of looking at that is you might be dreaming about winning the lottery, but you haven't bought a ticket. Well, that's just kind of magical thinking. Or you could buy a lottery ticket and have the same 1.7 billion chance as anybody else, but at least you bought the ticket. And so it's about imagining what is possible because you know that it's happened before. So the fourth one is about cognitive flexibility and constructive reframing. So how do we learn to adapt? How do we change the way that we, how do we react emotionally, how we react with our behaviors, and how do we have more thoughtful responses? And sometimes with resilience, we're the ones who have to do the changing. We might be sitting around waiting for everybody else to change. It's kind of unrealistic. We need to be the ones who change. And finally, this all comes down to resilient thinking, self-belief, social support. What are the active things that we do, the proactive things that we do to consciously try to be mindful and to reach out, get support, get feedback, and to support others? So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give you a bunch of very quick tips across physical, mental, emotional, and social resilience. So the first one for physical resilience is just don't sit still. Get out of your chair every hour. Just walk over and talk to somebody. Walk down the hallway. Walk around the building. It's really important that we remove ourselves from that sort of sedentary place that we are and just keep moving. The second tip, and you can probably combine this with the first one, is get outside for at least 10 minutes a day and see some sunlight. Remember earlier when I said that your brain goes through all these processes at night? Part of what makes it do that so well is when you can see natural sunlight for at least 10 minutes a day. It creates this chain reaction that then produces lots of really good chemicals for us. The third one is get some really good advice from whoever you would go to for good advice, like your GP, and find out what your body needs for resilience. I can't give you tips on how much water you should drink, what food to eat, what exercise to do. That's very unique to you, so get some specialist help with that. Now, when it comes to mental resilience, you just need to get in the habit of asking more questions of yourself. How am I behaving in this situation? How am I reacting? How could I react? How do I want to react? What do I want to learn? How do I want to be? What part am I playing in this? Am I the one creating the drama? Can I change that? And also being able to get better at asking other people questions instead of making assumptions. Just spend some time and ask people questions. Now, with all this comes reflective practice. Now, reflective practice sounds like a fairly easy thing. Think about all this stuff. But the key change is that you have to put it into writing. Because there's this inner dialogue that's going on all the time. And there's not necessarily a constructed pattern to it. And sometimes we add in fictional bits and pieces that aren't necessarily all that helpful. But the science shows that when you can do reflective practice in writing, so you take a question from your brain and you write it down. And then you reflect on that and you take some of those words from your brain in response to that and you write those down. So you could write that on the notes on your phone or in a notebook. Doesn't really matter where you write it down. The point is you are consciously choosing questions and responses, committing yourself to those words, and it starts creating new neural pathways in your brain that help you become a more constructive thinker overall. And third with this one is set goals and make progress, little bits of progress. And my favorite coaching question in the world is, what's one thing you could be 10% better at this month than you were last month? There's always an answer to that question, even if you need to think about it overnight. It could be the thing that you are the strongest at and you just want to get a little bit better at it, or maybe the thing that you're not so good at. The point is just try to find what's that next notch on the scale to move up to. And then once you get there, then you can find the next notch and then the next notch. So it's about making progress, not necessarily big leaps toward achievement. When it comes to emotional resilience, the key tip there is something called the 3-to-1 ratio. So the 3-to-1 ratio is, you know you're going to have some negative emotions during the day. All right, fine. Try to consciously find and identify and name 3 positive or constructive or really useful other emotive experiences throughout the day. So there's bound to be something you're grateful for, something you liked, something that made you laugh. Those are great positive experiences. Take a catalog of those, not just the negative stuff that you've experienced in a day. Now, I did mention laughter. That's the second point. Have a good laugh. Watch comedy videos, go to comedy clubs, have fun card games with friends. Just have a great time. Find places to laugh. And in particular, laugh out loud. If you're the kind of person who laughs quietly on the inside like I used to be, that's kind of good. But when you learn to laugh out loud, the amazing thing is, the moment you start laughing, all the negative self-talk stops. It's not possible to have an internal dialogue when you're laughing out loud. So might as well have fun while we're getting rid of all that stuff. And the third is kind of a really fun one. Look at cute animals on videos and pictures, little baby animals, kittens and baby elephants and penguins. Whatever makes you laugh and smile, because the science actually shows that when you look at those cute, smiley creatures, including babies and things like that, it creates oxytocin in your body, and we want more oxytocin. So go look at kittens all day long. Well, maybe not all day long, but definitely go look at kittens. So that takes us to social resilience. And so part of this is about remembering to commit time to spend with friends and family and colleagues. And we can do better at that, hey, how are you? Fine, how are you? Conversation. We can actually stop and chat for, say, 2 minutes. Have a little bit more meaningful conversations with people. It's only a few more minutes. And your friends are inviting you out to spend time with them on the weekends, but we can get so caught up in resting on the weekends just so that we can go back to work on Monday. Use some of that time to spend it with family and friends. They've been looking forward to seeing us, and it's good for us when we spend time with them. The second is hug a little bit more. Like if you're used to hugging somebody and you hug on one side, make sure you stop and hug on the other side too. If you shake hands for a few more seconds. The science actually shows that if you shake hands with somebody for 6 seconds straight, it creates floods of oxytocin in our body. It may seem a little bit odd shaking hands that long, but it has a huge chemical positive reaction for us. And the third one for this is keep a gratitude journal of some sort. It could just be bullet points at the end of each day. My favorite ones that I use are, what surprised me today? What did I find interesting? And what am I grateful just generically? And what I like about those questions is it kind of builds up the bank account, if you will, about the good things that happen in my day, not just the other stuff. So find some way of keeping a record of that stuff each day. So to wrap up this first section of the video, I just want to highlight that scientists and researchers and philosophers have all finally kind of agreed on some of the things that make us wise, and that wisdom is a really key part of what makes us resilient. So there are 4 parts, and I'll throw in a bonus one for you. The first of these 4 parts is, how do we learn? So we need to actively look for learning experiences. We need to find those stretch zone experiences. We need to Google top 10 tips for time management and find something and do something with it. We need to proactively look for, how do we develop ourselves? Now the second tip is, how do we develop our emotional intelligence? And it's incredibly important that we learn how to identify how we react to situations and then learn how to regulate that better so that we're better, more responsive people. Because when we do that, we have better empathy for others, we have better social relationships, and we're able to set and achieve goals much more effectively because of that, and particularly because of that collaboration with others. The third bit is that we need to ask more questions. And this is particular about how we're interpreting our experiences. The more constructive we interpret our life's experiences, the more resilient we become. We have better stories to tell versus the woe is me story. And the final tip for this, out of these 4 that the researchers have agreed, is that we need to get better at creative thinking, critical thinking, problem solving. We need to learn how to be more empowered and take more control and set more goals and solve our stuff. It's a really important wisdom and life skill to have. So I said there was a bonus I was going to throw in. You've already heard me talk about it, and that is gratitude. In particular, we need to practice gratitude better. We need to not just be polite and say thank you, although that's very good. We need to be able to say thank you and specifically what for. So if you helped me out with something, I could say, thank you so much for helping me out with that. It reduced so much stress for me and I feel a lot better because of it. What I've just done there is I've demonstrated what I'm grateful for and the impact that you've had on me. So you are far more likely to do those sort of behaviors again because the impact is what was important, not the politeness of saying thank you. So do something to manage your well-being and write down your growth. Come up with plans. Put those plans in writing. You can't just keep it all in your head. Science shows that those people who write down their goals are at least twice more likely to achieve them than those people who don't. So keep that in mind for your resilience goals.